Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. Last week, we talked about, that quote that I saw outside of the church when I drive into the grocery store. There's a church on the way. They put up signs. It says, God's light shines through any darkness. And I talked about that a little bit, just about the idea that everything comes out of the absolute. The absolute wells up through relativity, births relativity, and the absolute is a source of infinite intelligence and creativity and harmony. And so that's the thing that sort of creates and also maintains the universe, because it continues to breathe in that coherence. But see, it's an interesting thing because well, one thing I read somewhere, and I believe it's not true. In fact, I found a link that said it's not true. You can find that on YouTube if you wanted to look at it. But what the claim was that NASA is looking at Sanskrit as a language that they can use for artificial intelligence. And I don't believe it's true. According to this link, that they say it's not true, but it's kind of going around. But I can understand why it's going around, and that is that there's Sanskrit's a beautiful language to study because there's a perfection to it. First of all, it's a language of nature, and so it's infinitely harmonious with the self-interacting dynamic of pure consciousness, which is pure intelligence. Pure intelligence meaning that there's a structure there it's perfect. Like set theory, consciousness becomes conscious of itself. Two things is born, comes where those two things, a third thing is born, cascades out into infinity. It's like a geometrically, you could say mathematically precise, perfect structure. And so we could say that that's a state of pure intelligence. And so we can distinguish between intelligence and intelligent. Pure intelligence, when the universe manifests, becomes intelligent. In other words, that perfection of structure that lies there, dormant isn't really the right word, but from the perspective of relativity, you could say, I guess, lies there dormant within the absolute. But it's a field of pure intelligence. But it becomes intelligent when things start to manifest, when the relative starts to manifest. And this whole universe, everything in it, everything you're looking at, my voice, the room you're in, whatever, that's all intelligence. That's become intelligent. There's an intelligence within everything. I hope does that make sense, Scotty?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. The distinction between intelligence and intelligent. Now, therefore, at the basis of everything is pure intelligence that has become intelligent and created a structure in the relative. But the whole thing is so complex that when we, as a species, when we look at something, we pull out just a certain degree of the intelligence that's there. So we oversimplify it, and that's when we talk about projection, perception, and so we project our level of knowledge, our paradigm identity, we project it onto everything. There's this thing they do in psychology that I'm sure you're familiar with. They hold up these papers. They're just ink blots, right? And you hold the ink blot up to one person. You say, "What does this look like?" And they may say it looks like a bat. you hold the same thing up to another person and you say, what does this look like? And same ink blot, and they say, what does this look like? And the other person might say it's an angel. And so these are, in the field of psychology, they kind of use those as a kind of a gateway into a person's psychodynamic makeup, maybe short-term or long-term, whatever, but nevertheless, the point is that we project onto. And the more we can get in touch with the idea that we are actually projecting more than we're perceiving. This whole universe really is a field of projection. And they talk about parallel universes. Well, you have your universe, I have my universe, everybody has their own universe, and it's all built out of our own projections based on our psychodynamic structure and what we see in the ink blot of existence. And that creates a level of humility and a degree of willingness, you see, to look back, to take a step back and look at our perspective of other people, of situations, of how we tick, how we function. But now, see, it gets really interesting because I was reading about the Torah code that you know about the Torah code, Scotty?
Is it? I've heard the Bible code before. Is it similar?
Yeah, it's like the Bible code. In other words, there's hidden knowledge contained within the words that go deeper than the surface meaning of the words. And so that if you know how to read it, if you know how to analyze the Torah or the Bible or really anything, then you can pull out the knowledge of everything. And it's kind of like I am the absolute, you are the absolute, everything is the absolute. And so that it just follows then that if everything emerged out of the absolute and you are the absolute, then all knowledge is contained within you. The question then only becomes the degree to which it's accessible by you and also by other people. When you look at another person, how deeply are you really looking? To some degree, just more of a sense of feeling as opposed to really rigorous detail, intellectual detail, but to a degree of feeling, that's what love is, really. You see another person, you're in love with another person. What is that about? That is that you sense, you feel, you see, if you will, the divine, the absolute, the perfection that person is. That's called love. So if you look at it like a clear sky is the absolute, and then there are clouds. Some of the clouds are thick, but the light shines through. Other clouds are so dense that, blocks all the light, really. But at any given time on the planet, there are areas of greater clarity of perception than others. And there are some things, and that's what they're talking about when they talk about the Torah or the Bible, or also in India. To this day, it's an incredible thing, but there are the nadis. What are the nadis? The nadis are records etched on palm leaves. That's what they used instead of paper, a long time ago. And to this day, they have, certain nadis. There's one in Chennai and different, I think there's one in Mumbai and I forget where all, where there are these nadi readers. They have the palm leaves. And if you go see them or talk to them, then they access these palm leaves. And these palm leaves were written, thousands of years ago by seers, people with a very clear perception. The clouds weren't there, so there wasn't so much projection as perception, you see? And so you can go to them and they'll look you up and find you and give you a reading, and it's staggering the stuff they come up with and the accuracy, and how could they possibly know that? I went to one in Chennai where they didn't want to know your name. They refused to allow me to even say my name. I just walked in off the street. They had no idea who I was. And they, from a thumbprint, and they find the palm leaf that's for you and give you a reading. And it's like the stuff they come up with is your name. How can they come up with your name? How old you are, your parents' names, your brothers and sisters, all that. So the thing is that the world is way more profound. And see, we're talking about nature here. We're talking about the nature of existence. That's what it means to be natural. Our notions of natural fall far short of what natural really means. And natural includes all the pure knowledge that comes out of the Veda. And it can emerge in different areas in different ways. To some degree, it's emerging out through the Bible. And other, if people can perceive it that deeply. In other ways, it emerges out of the Torah, if people can perceive it that deeply. So the Veda, even the Aborigine and some of the holy men in Finland, just all around the world, there are these little areas of clear spots where people perceive deeply. To some degree, I mean, you could say that's what genius is really, is someone who's perceiving something, picking something up on a very profound and subtle level, a deeper level than most people are capable of doing, be it in mathematics or music or whatever their field of clarity, of perception is. There's a phrase called pasha, P-A-S-H-Y-A. I guess you'd spell it in English. It's a Sanskrit term. It means see. And gurus will tell their students, just see. It's just a matter of seeing what is. Just see. And when you really see clearly, and there are various degrees of clarity about what I'm about to say. It can be a sense, or it can be a very profound and deep perception. But what you ultimately see is that all of this is just lightly etched on the face of the unified field, the field of pure consciousness, the field of pure intelligence, the underlying basis of all existence. Like a backdrop. It's like a TV screen. Usually when we look at the TV screen, we look at the projection on the screen. In the case we're speaking about, you would see the projection on the absolute, which is the room you're in or the view you're looking at or what have you. But when you really see, then you see the backdrop for what it is. And you see that all of this is just lightly etched upon the face of that being, of that backdrop of pure being, pure isness, pure intellect, pure intelligence. See, we can hear this. And okay, I get that. Okay, I know all about that. Okay, I've heard that. Okay, I get it. But we even know all about on different levels. And when we take that knowing about and make it a paradigm that we're identified with, then it even can become an obstacle to us looking deeper. Because somebody tries to help you see it in a deeper way. You say, oh, no, I already know that. I get that. What else can you tell me? And so that's how it all comes together. couple other things before we close. Trees, plants, they're essentially made of carbon, right? It's all carbon. Where does that carbon come from? I mean, these trees are huge and there are millions of them and they're heavy. Where does the carbon come from? You might think it comes from the roots and it pulls it out from the soil, but that's not true. The carbon, the bulk of the carbon that trees and plants are made out of comes out of the air. Plants breathe carbon dioxide and pull the carbon out, and those are the building blocks that trees are made out of air. It's an incredible thing, I think. Another thing before we close, and that's something called the telomeres. We have DNA, and those are the fundamental. The DNA is the physical body, what the absolute is to existence. They're the foundation. There's a structure there. There's an intelligence there. And it is the building block of cells and the whole physiology. But at the end of the strands of DNA are things called telomeres. And telomeres, as we age, as we become less and less healthy, telomeres they get shorter. But the thing is that the stem cells are undifferentiated cells. They can turn into any kind of cell. And when they sort of like, so to speak, scan the DNA, it tells them what to turn into. But to completely scan the DNA, it's got to go all the way to the end of the DNA to where the telomeres are. But if the telomeres are damaged or shortened or something, then the scan isn't complete. And that's the cause of disease and aging. Telomeres, you can compare them to like the plastic at the end of a shoestring, and it holds the shoestring together. So a telomere holds the DNA together so that you get a complete scan. But if the plastic breaks up, if it starts to have problems, then the shoestring starts to fray. And so the scan becomes incomplete. And so reversal of aging, slowing down of the aging process, it's all about, not all about, but largely about the health of the telomeres. And there's a lot we can do, just obvious stuff, diet, exercise, so on and so forth. But also, now this is really interesting because I've talked about peptides before. Peptides are like amino acid strands that are likened to hormones and different things in the body, and they can be taken orally. Most of them have to be injected. But it's a new field, depending on how popular it is, past 10, 20 years, but gaining in popularity. And there are peptides that lengthen the telomeres. And so they're saying that those peptides can increase longevity. Now, I think the whole field of peptides is fascinating and the potential is enormous, but I'm also a little hesitant with it because it's a new field. Just like with x-rays, they invented x-rays or invented x-ray machines. And it took some time before they really knew how to deal with it in a masterful way, Anyway, I think anything else to add, Scotty, before we close?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, when we're talking about like the absolute manifesting into reality, I was watching something about the slit experiment, where they shoot the photons through the slit and it creates a pattern. And then they brought an observer in, and that now it changes the particles. They either go from a wave to individual particle. I forgot what the order is.
It behaves one way or the other, like
right.
On the,
And then also, what I didn't realize is that they've tried to trick it too, where they had an observer, but it wasn't on. And then when it went through the slit, they turned on the observer, and then it backed itself into what it should be when it's observed, not when it's not being observed. So it like went back in time and changed itself and all the molecules that were going through.
I don't know about that particular experiment enough to comment on it, but
Right.
it is similar to the whole idea in the structure of knowledge, is that you have the knower and the known. And this goes right back to when consciousness becomes conscious of itself. Consciousness is the knower, it becomes conscious of itself, and itself then becomes the known. And there's a process there, the process of knowing, knower, known, process of knowing, Rishi Devata Chandas,
Right.
So the point is, they all the three interface in a way that, is it all about Rishi, or is it all about Devata, is it all about Chandas? Because in a way, from a particular perspective, you could say, well, one defines the other. It's kind of like this, does the silhouette around letters on a piece of paper, is it the silhouette that defines the letters, or is it the letters that define the silhouette? One defines the other. Strictly speaking, really the whole idea of Rishi Devata Chandas is separate things isn't even valid. There's oneness there. Yeah. But the idea is, though, that there's a process. There's a knower, a known, and a process of knowing. And so that's really what we're talking about there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It was just interesting to see how that you could actually scientifically show how that dynamic works.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm not familiar with that experiment. There's a nice quote, by the way, Winston Churchill. He was trying to convince the United States to help them help England with World War II for a long time, and I think that's where some of his quotes come from. Is like the one where he said, "You can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they've exhausted every other possibility." I think it makes sense to me that he was referring to us not coming into the war and entertaining this idea and that idea, but eventually they came upon, okay, we got to go help these guys. But another quote, and I like this quote quite a bit. He says, "Those that never change their minds never change anything." And that really speaks nicely to what we talked about today, is that we have a paradigm identity and we perceive everything in terms of that paradigm identity, and we don't evolve. And even the I get it syndrome, oh yeah, I know all about it, the absolute, or I know all about the Veda, or anything. Humility is the flip side of wisdom. All right, unless there's anything else, we'll call it a day here. Thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate you very much. Thinking about actually going on tour at some point. I'd like to do some live lectures. So who knows, maybe that's in store. I'm thinking about the Bay Area, San Francisco. At any rate, we'll talk again next week. Thanks for listening.